There is a moment, maybe you're in it right now, where you look at your life and you realize you've been chasing enough for years, enough money, enough approval, enough certainty, enough control. And no matter how much you gather, it never quite arrives. That feeling of enough. It stays just out of reach, like a horizon that moves when you move toward it. And tonight, I want to sit with you in that ache for a moment. Not to rush past it, not to fix it with a quick answer, but to actually look at it. Because underneath that ache is a question you've probably never said out loud. The question is this: what if I don't need one more thing? What if I already have access to the one thing that was always going to be enough? That thing is not a person, it's not a job, it's not a number in a bank account, it's not a relationship status, it's God. And I know how that sounds. I know it sounds like the kind of thing people say when they've run out of real answers. But stay with me, because I don't mean it the way it's often said. I don't mean it as a slogan, I mean it as a description of how you were built. You were not built to run on approval. You were not built to run on outcomes. You were built to run on presence, on connection to the one who made you. And when that connection is thin, everything else in your life feels like it's never quite enough, because it's being asked to do a job it was never designed to do. Think about it honestly. How many things have you asked to be your God without calling them that? A relationship you needed to work out, or your whole identity would crumble. A career milestone you needed to hit, or you'd feel like a failure. A version of yourself you needed other people to see, or you couldn't feel okay. None of those things are bad in themselves. But when they're asked to be the source, the foundation, the thing that holds everything else up, they buckle, because they were never made to bear that weight. Only one thing was made to bear that weight. And it's not a thing at all. It's a presence, a relationship, a steady, patient, unshakable love that doesn't fluctuate with your performance, doesn't disappear when you fail, doesn't require you to prove yourself before it shows up. If this is landing somewhere in you tonight, if some quiet part of you is nodding along even as another part resists it, take 30 seconds right now and hit that like button. It helps this reach someone else who's lying awake at 2 a.m. asking the same questions you're asking. And if you haven't yet, subscribe, because there's more where this came from. Every single week. Let's talk about what it actually looks like to live like God is enough. Because it's not passive. It's not just a feeling you wait to arrive. It's a posture. A daily, sometimes hourly, choice to come back to what's true when everything in you wants to reach for a substitute. The first shift is noticing your reach. Notice what your hand goes to when you're anxious. Is it your phone? Is it food? Is it planning and replanning a conversation that hasn't even happened yet? Is it checking on other people's lives to measure your own? None of these are moral failures. They're signals. They're telling you where you've been taught to look for peace. And once you notice the reach, you get to choose something different. The second shift is remembering that stillness is not empty. Our culture treats stillness like a void that has to be filled. Silence in a room feels uncomfortable. A quiet evening feels like something's missing. But stillness, when you stop running from it, is where you actually meet God. Not in the noise, not in the hustle, not in the constant scroll, in the quiet. That's where His voice tends to live, not because He's shy, but because that's where you can actually hear anything at all. Try this tonight or tomorrow morning. Give yourself 5 minutes of nothing. No phone, no music, no task. Just sit. And when your mind starts screaming that you're wasting time, don't argue with it. Just breathe and stay. You're not wasting time. You're making room. Room for a presence that's been waiting for you to stop running long enough to notice it was there the whole time. The third shift is learning to receive instead of earn. This one is hard, especially if you grew up believing love was a reward for good behavior. But grace doesn't work that way. You don't earn your way into being enough. You were never supposed to. The invitation was always to receive, not to perform. And when you stop performing for love, you start actually experiencing it, maybe for the first time in your adult life. I want you to notice something about your own story. The moments you're proudest of are usually not the moments you had it all together. They're the moments you were honest about not having it together, and something bigger than you carried you through anyway. That's not a coincidence. That's the pattern of how this actually works. Strength isn't the absence of need. Strength is bringing your need to the one place it was always meant to go. If you're finding this helpful, drop a comment and tell me where you are right now. Are you in a season of chasing or a season of resting? Are you exhausted from trying to be enough on your own? I read every single comment, and it helps me know what to make next, so don't be shy. Let's go a little deeper into what it means to trust when you can't see the outcome, because that's really where all of this gets tested. It's easy to say God is enough when your life is calm. It's much harder when the bills are due, the diagnosis is uncertain, the relationship is strained, and nothing is resolving on your timeline. Here's something worth sitting with. Faith was never designed to remove uncertainty. It was designed to hold you steady inside uncertainty. Those are different things. A lot of people wait to feel peace before they'll believe peace is possible. But peace often comes after the choice to trust, not before. You choose to lean, and the steadiness follows, not the other way around. Think about a time you were more afraid of a future event than the event itself turned out to deserve. Most of us have dozens of these. The meeting we dreaded that went fine. The conversation we avoided that turned out to be a relief. The diagnosis that scared us before we understood it. Fear tends to exaggerate the size of the mountain, and trust tends to be the thing that lets you keep walking even while the mountain looks enormous. This doesn't mean pretending things are fine when they're not. God is not asking you to perform positivity. He's asking you to be honest, and to bring that honesty to Him instead of carrying it alone. There's a difference between denial and trust. Denial says nothing is wrong. Trust says something is wrong, and I'm not facing it by myself. One of the most freeing realizations you can have is this. You don't have to have your life figured out to be loved. You don't have to have your future planned to be held. You don't have to know how this chapter ends to have peace inside it. That peace isn't naive. It's not the absence of concern. It's the presence of someone who is not overwhelmed by what overwhelms you. Let that sink in for a second. Nothing you're carrying tonight is heavy to Him, not because it isn't real, but because His capacity is not like yours. You're not asking a small God to somehow handle a big problem. You're bringing a big problem to a source that was never small to begin with. If you want to remember this conversation later, save this video and share it with someone who's carrying something right now. You never know when the exact words someone needs will land in their feed at exactly the right moment. That might be you sharing it that makes the difference for them tonight. Let's talk about identity for a moment. Because so much of the chasing we do is really an identity search. We chase achievement because we're hoping it will finally tell us we matter. We chase relationships because we're hoping someone else's love will confirm what we can't confirm for ourselves. We chase approval because a part of us doesn't yet believe we're enough without it. Here's the truth underneath all of that. Your worth was never up for debate. It was settled before you did anything to earn it, and it can't be unsettled by anything you do to lose it. That's not a comfortable truth for people who've built their whole identity on performance. but it's the truest thing about you. You are loved not because of what you produce, but because of who made you. When that truth actually reaches your heart, not just your head, something shifts. You stop needing every relationship to save you. You stop needing every achievement to validate you. You stop needing every person's opinion to define you. Not because you no longer care about those things, but because they're no longer carrying weight they were never meant to carry. This is what it means, practically, for God to be all you need. It doesn't mean you stop having relationships, or stop working hard, or stop caring about your life. It means those things get to be what they actually are. Good gifts. Instead of substitutes for the one thing your soul was actually asking for. I want to talk about rest for a moment. Because rest is where a lot of this becomes real. Not vacation, not a day off, but the deep kind of rest that comes from not having to hold everything together by yourself. So many of us are exhausted, not from our schedules, but from the invisible weight of believing everything depends on us. What if it doesn't? What if you were never meant to carry it all? What if the reason you're tired isn't that you're doing too much, but that you're carrying things that were never assigned to you? The outcome of a conversation you can't control. The healing of a relationship that isn't only up to you. The future of a situation that hasn't unfolded yet. Set some of that down tonight. Not because it doesn't matter, but because it was never yours to hold alone. You can care deeply about something and still release your grip on controlling how it turns out. Those two things are not in conflict. In fact, releasing the grip is often what makes real care possible again, instead of anxious control. If this episode is speaking to something in your life right now, I'd love for you to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. This channel exists to be a quiet place you can return to, especially on the nights when everything else feels loud. Let's talk about waiting, because so much of life is spent there, and almost nothing prepares us for how hard it is. Waiting for a job to come through, waiting for a relationship to heal or to end, waiting for test results, waiting for a season to make sense. Waiting is one of the most spiritually stretching places we ever stand, because it strips away our illusion of control faster than almost anything else. In the waiting, you find out what you actually believe, not what you say you believe, not what sounds good in a conversation, but what your heart defaults to at 2 a.m. when the waiting room is quiet and there's nothing left to distract you. Does it default to panic? Does it default to bargaining? Or does it default, even a little, to trust? Here's something that might help. Waiting is not the same as being forgotten. Those two things get confused so easily, especially when the waiting stretches longer than you expected. But a delay is not a denial. A pause is not an abandonment. Some of the most important things in your life are being formed right now, in this exact waiting, in ways you won't be able to see until you're looking back at it. Think about anything that grows slowly and strongly. Nothing that matters much grows instantly. The things that last, the things that hold weight, they take time, they take root quietly, before they show up visibly. Your life is not exempt from that pattern. What feels like nothing happening might actually be the most important construction happening underground, out of sight, exactly where it needs to happen first. So if you're in a waiting season right now, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not behind. You are not being punished. You are not forgotten. You are being formed. And formation takes time that feels unbearably slow from the inside and makes perfect sense looking back. Let's talk about comparison for a moment, because comparison might be the single fastest way to lose your peace. You open your phone, you see someone else's highlight reel, and suddenly your ordinary, real, textured life feels like it's not enough. But here's the thing. You're comparing your entire behind the scenes to someone else's edited front stage. That's not a fair comparison, and it never was. Every person you're comparing yourself to has a version of the ache you're feeling right now. They have their own 2 a.m. thoughts, their own waiting rooms, their own unresolved chapters. You just don't see them, because most people only show the parts they've already made peace with, or the parts that photograph well. You're not behind them. You're just further along in showing your struggle honestly, which honestly is its own kind of strength. What if instead of comparing your chapter to someone else's, you asked what this specific chapter is trying to teach you? What if the delay you're frustrated by is actually protecting you from something you can't see yet? What if the door that didn't open was closed on purpose, not as punishment, but as redirection towards something that fits you better than what you were reaching for? This requires a kind of trust that doesn't come naturally. It has to be practiced, and practicing it looks like small, repeated choices. Choosing gratitude in a moment that tempts you toward bitterness. Choosing to be honest in prayer instead of performing certainty you don't feel. Choosing to keep showing up to your life even when you can't see the whole plan. None of this makes the waiting comfortable. I'm not going to pretend it does, but it does make the waiting meaningful instead of just endured. There's a difference between white-knuckling your way through a hard season and walking through it with your hand open, trusting that you're being carried even when you can't feel the ground clearly beneath you. If any part of this is describing your current season, take a breath right now and just acknowledge it. You don't have to fix it tonight. You don't have to have clarity by tomorrow. You just have to keep bringing your honest self back to the presence that's been steady the whole time, even during the parts where you felt most alone. Let's talk about forgiveness for a moment. Because unforgiveness is one of the heaviest things people carry, without realizing how much weight it's adding. Maybe it's forgiveness towards someone else, a parent who wasn't what you needed, a friend who left when you needed them to stay, a version of betrayal that still sits in your chest when you think about it. Or maybe it's forgiveness toward yourself, for choices you regret, for years you feel like you wasted, for a version of you that you're embarrassed you used to be. Forgiveness is not the same as saying what happened was okay. It's not minimizing the hurt. It's releasing your grip on carrying that hurt as a debt someone else owes you, or a debt you owe yourself. It's recognizing that carrying resentment doesn't punish the other person nearly as much as it exhausts you. This is hard work, and it's not a one-time decision. It's often a decision you have to make again and again, especially on days when the memory resurfaces unexpectedly. But each time you choose it again, it gets a little lighter. Not because the past changes, but because your grip on it loosens. And here's the gentle part. If you're struggling to forgive someone or yourself, you don't have to manufacture the feeling of forgiveness before you take the step. You can say honestly, I'm not there yet, but I'm willing to be led there. That honesty is not weakness. It's the exact kind of openness that makes real healing possible, instead of a performance of healing that never actually reaches your heart. Let's talk, finally, about purpose, because underneath a lot of the searching we do is a quiet fear that our life doesn't matter, that we're not doing anything significant, that somewhere out there other people are living lives with meaning and we're just going through the motions. Here's something worth remembering. Your purpose was never only in the big, visible moments. It's also in the small, faithful, repeated ones. The way you show up for the people in front of you, the honesty you bring to hard conversations, the patience you practice on an exhausting day, the kindness you choose when it would be easier not to. Those are not lesser versions of purpose. Those are purpose, happening in real time, in the actual texture of your actual life. You don't need a stage to matter. You don't need recognition to be significant. You are already living inside a story that has weight, even in the parts that feel small and unnoticed. Trust that the small, faithful things you do are seen, even when no one is watching, even when you don't feel particularly remarkable while you're doing them. One more thing before we close, and I think it might be the most important part of this whole conversation. God being all you need doesn't mean you were designed to do life alone. It's easy to hear a message like this and think the goal is total self-sufficiency, just you and God, needing nothing and no one else. But that's not quite right either. You were also made for connection, for community, for people who know your real life, not just your highlight reel. Part of how God shows up for you is through other people. A friend who checks on you at the right moment. A stranger's kindness that arrives exactly when you needed it. A conversation that shifts something in you without either person fully realizing why. Don't mistake that for coincidence. Sometimes provision doesn't fall from the sky. It walks through a door wearing a familiar face. So, if you've been isolating, if you've been carrying everything alone because it feels safer than being vulnerable with another person, I want to gently challenge that tonight. Reach out to someone. Not to perform that you have it together, but to be honest about where you actually are. You might be surprised how much lighter something feels the moment you stop holding it in silence. Let's talk about gratitude for a moment too, because gratitude has a strange power to reorder what feels overwhelming. Not gratitude as denial, not forcing yourself to feel thankful when you're in real pain, but gratitude as a practice of noticing the things that are still good, even in a hard season, the people who showed up, the body that's still carrying you through each day, the small mercies that are easy to miss when you're focused entirely on what's missing. Try this, tonight or tomorrow. Name 3 things, out loud or in writing, that you're grateful for, even in the middle of whatever you're facing. They don't have to be big: a warm meal, a text from a friend, a moment of unexpected quiet. This isn't about ignoring what's hard. It's about training your attention to notice that hard and good can exist in the same day, the same hour, even the same breath. Gratitude doesn't erase the struggle, but it does loosen its grip on your attention, just enough to remind you that your life is not only made of what's missing, it's also made of what remains, what's steady, what's still, even now, being provided. I also want to say something to the version of you who feels like you've prayed for the same thing for years and nothing has changed. I know how discouraging that is. I know how it can start to feel like either you're doing something wrong or you're simply not being heard. But silence is not the same as absence. A season without a visible answer is not evidence that no one is listening. Some of the deepest work happening in a life is invisible for a long time. It's happening in your character, in your capacity, in the way you're being prepared for what's coming, long before you can see what's coming. Trust doesn't mean pretending the weight doesn't hurt. It means continuing to show up honestly, even when the silence is long, even when you don't understand the timing. And if you've walked away from faith altogether, if this whole conversation feels like it's for someone else, someone more certain than you, someone who hasn't seen what you've seen or lost what you've lost, I want you to know this door is still open. There's no version of your doubt, your anger, your exhaustion that disqualifies you from being welcomed back. You don't have to have it figured out to start again. You just have to be willing to take one honest step back toward the quiet. Let's close with something practical you can carry into tomorrow. When you wake up, before you check your phone, before the noise of the day rushes in, take 1 minute, just one, and say, quietly, in your own words, something like this. Today, I don't have to carry this alone. Today I am enough, not because of what I do, but because of who holds me. You don't need the perfect words. You don't need a formal prayer. You just need honesty. Say what's actually true for you. Say what you're afraid of. Say what you're hoping for. And then let there be a pause. Let there be room for something to answer back, even if the answer isn't audible, even if it comes as a settling in your chest instead of a voice in your ear. That settling is not nothing. That's presence. That's the thing you've been reaching for in 100 other places, finally being recognized for what it actually is. You don't have to go looking anymore. You don't have to keep collecting more to finally feel like enough. You already have access to everything you actually need. Not because your circumstances have changed. They may not change for a while. But because the foundation underneath your circumstances has always been more solid than the circumstances themselves. You were standing on it the whole time, even when you couldn't feel it. So tonight, however this day went, however this week has been, however uncertain your next steps feel, let this be the thing you rest in. You are not alone. You are not required to figure it all out tonight. You are held by something steadier than your best day and stronger than your worst one. God is all you need. Not as a slogan you repeat when things are easy, but as a truth you return to when things are hard. And every time you return to it, it gets a little more real, a little more yours. Until one day you notice you're not chasing enough anymore. You're just resting in it. Before you go, if this brought you any peace tonight, like this video, leave a comment with one word describing how you're feeling right now, and subscribe so you can come back whenever you need this reminder again. Thank you for spending this time here. Rest well, and I'll see you in the next one.